With all the drama unfolding recently at Ferrari, plus their increasingly strained relationship with Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, could this mean that Haas might have to look for an Oliver Bearman replacement sooner than they expected? Ollie Bearman's recent charge has coincided very nicely with Ferrari's latest kerfuffle and has apparently put him into the conversation for a 2027 Ferrari seat. Now, Bearman is on what's called a multi-year loan, meaning that he's on contract with Haas until the end of 2026, whilst keeping his Ferrari ties intact. So effectively, Haas are borrowing Bearman from Ferrari until those at Maranello decide whether he's actually needed or not. And worryingly, for Haas, I sense there's a possibility that he might be needed there after all, and possibly sooner than they expected too. Now, you might have noticed, particularly since the summer break, Ollie Bearman has got his act together. He's pulled in some solid results and opened a gap up between him and his much more experienced teammate Esteban Ocon. Now, this is great for Haas because points mean prizes. However, with Ocon being a race winner, the more senior driver, and $5 million more expensive than Bearman per year, you can imagine that Gene Haas and co might have a sense that this little plan of theirs has gone slightly off script. The plan being for Ocon to lead the way whilst showing Bearman the ropes. Meanwhile, over at Ferrari, Leclerc and Hamilton would be a barnstorming success, resulting in Ollie Bearman not being needed by Maranello, not just yet anyway. And this is the risk you take when you loan in a driver from elsewhere and it turns out that they're actually doing well. You are essentially helping increase the value of another team's asset. So kind of like paying the rent on someone else's mortgage. And for Ferrari, Hamilton, Leclerc, and with this whole talk less thing that's been going on, the loaning of Bearman to Haas has been a massive success for Ferrari because Bearman, whilst a bit accident prone, unlucky and outshone in the first half of the season, appears to have fully turned it around, showing resilience, self-control and most of all speed. Exactly the kind of qualities you need as a Ferrari driver, and actually throw consistency in there as well. But unfortunately for Haas, Bearman is not a long-term solution for the team, and it looks like that they're going to have to venture back into the driver market for 2027 onwards. And I find this a bit of a shame. Haas is a team I've developed a bit of a soft spot for. After all, since sacking Gunter Steiner and promoting Ao Komatsu to team principal, they've gone from drive to survive fodder who you wanted to fail because it was so entertaining, to a tightly run, harmonious, little engine that could sort of team who you genuinely wanted to do well. They've had some decent driver lineups in the last few years, a proper title sponsor in MoneyGram, and even commercial backing from Toyota, who I sense are still sniffing around waiting for that perfect opportunity to get fully involved. They've become a very efficient fixture in the F1 midfield and who I sense would want to try and keep Bearman around for the foreseeable future. And from their point of view, it's understandable why, because he's media friendly, he seems to be likeable, inoffensive, and very relatable to some of F1's younger fans too, which actually is more than you can say for some of Haas's previous drivers. Now, as you might know, Haas maintains a very close partnership with Ferrari, and this means that Haas uses many Ferrari supplied parts such as power units, gearboxes, suspension units, and also, as we established earlier, drivers too. But with this, if the situation at Maranello worsens and a seat opens up at the team for 2027, or, who knows how things go, 2026, good old Bearman will be off. And after the whole thing that's been going on at Ferrari, you can kind of understand why they would want a driver such as Bearman to step into the shoes of Hamilton, for example. He'll be massively cheaper, potentially to the tune of $55 million a year, and being a Ferrari junior driver, he'll be well versed in the ways of Maranello and won't have any lingering memories of how things were done at, say, Mercedes or McLaren, because as we've seen so far, it's very much the red way or no way. And unfortunately for Haas, I sense that Ferrari would love to have Bearman as a replacement for Hamilton because he's one for the future and he's pretty much going to do exactly what he's told. Now, with all of this going on at Ferrari, you can imagine that down the pits over at Haas, Gene Haas, Komatsu and everyone else are going to be crossing all their fingers and toes, hoping that Ferrari choose to go down a different direction. They must be praying that Ferrari nail the 2026 regulations, thus keeping Hamilton and Leclerc happy at the team for 2027, thus blocking out any seat for Bearman. So not only would this give Haas Bearman for one more year, they would also get some sort of trickle-down performance from these hypothetically top performing Ferrari parts. Now, although Ferrari haven't always taken on their junior drivers in the past, take Sergio Perez for example, it's possible that Ferrari might want to make another big name signing. Bringing Carlos Sainz back into the fold for example could be a possibility, or even going after a big name such as an Oscar Piastri, George Russell, or maybe even if they really want to get their wallet out, Max Verstappen. Should Ferrari want to do a very Ferrari thing, learn absolutely no lessons and replace a blockbuster name with a blockbuster name, then they go down that road. But from Haas's perspective, this would be brilliant because they would get to keep Bearman for one more year. But the thing is, there's no point talking about what if this and what if that. Bearman, whichever way you cut it, is not going to be a long-term solution at Haas, but more like a promising stopgap. And because of this, Haas are going to have to choose someone else to build the team around. Because of course they'll need to go back to the drawing board after 2026 and decide what sort of team they want to be and what sort of direction they want to go in. And then there's also the risk of being thrust back into that whole mess that they had with drivers, 4, 5, 6 years ago. But it's also worth remembering that Haas doesn't have a junior driver program at the moment. However, the driver market right now is sloshing with seemingly unsigned talent, so it does look like a buyer's market that is going to benefit the team. But now that they're on much firmer footing than before, it hopefully means that they won't have to go down the dark, horrible alleyways of pay drivers and those who bring more money than talent, if you know what I mean. Now, as I hinted to earlier, if Toyota wanted to expand their involvement beyond sponsorship, I sense that there is a chance they could field one of their own hand-picked drivers, in the form of Ryo Hirakawa, who is the obvious choice as he is currently a Toyota driver and is also currently the Haas test and reserve driver. Now, if we're talking about Haas having to look for a replacement for Oliver Bearman early, we've got to talk about his teammate Esteban Ocon. Because for someone who's the senior driver and by default the team leader at Haas this season, he's had a somewhat non-existent year. Honestly, if it wasn't for the race commentary reminding you that he's currently running around in 14th place, you would never know that he was there. And his performances in the second half of the season have fallen so far short of what Bearman's been pulling off. And plus, he's not looking comfortable at all in the car right now, so you do wonder, will he add to Haas's problems, resulting in them having to seek 2 new drivers rather than 1. Now, ultimately, because of the progress Haas have made in the last few years, I think it's vital that they start considering a future without Bearman now, rather than leaving it till the last minute. If you're gonna have to replace him, make a proactive move in the driver market rather than waiting and making a very reactive one. Because of course, not only is it vital that they build on this progress that they've been making over the last few years, but also they're gonna have to come up with something good against this new challenge they've never seen before in the form of Cadillac. Now, chances are they won't face a challenge on track from Cadillac straight away. However, Cadillac already boasts one of the more successful driver lineups on the grid in terms of race wins between Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez. And this is far beyond anything Haas have ever seen. After all, Esteban Ocon is their only driver they've ever had who's seen the top step of a Formula One podium. But also there will naturally be a rivalry, from there being, 2 American teams and everything. And from this respect, Haas cannot afford to fall behind or even be overtaken by them. And this is what's such a shame from the Haas perspective and him not being a long-term driver, because he just feels like one of these guys at Haas who they could build the team around for the foreseeable future and just keep building things, more points, more interest, more publicity, more sponsors, and so on and so on. However, though, after this whole thing, hopefully what Haas do have now is an improved blueprint of what they want in a driver. I'd like to think that Nico Hülkenberg showed them what they need in an older driver, Ollie Bearman showed them what they need in a younger driver, and so they can use all this sort of stuff together to show them what their lineup needs to look like moving forwards. And they have to start making things count as well, because come 2026, 2027, this is going to be their best opportunity to break into the top 6 in the Constructors' Championship and also as well get that elusive podium as well. So whoever they decide to choose, not only does it have to be someone who's better or even equal to Bearman, it has to be someone that can keep Gene Haas's motivation and interest at a high level. Because the truth is, despite Haas seeing an improvement, they've always been one of those teams that doesn't seem far away from having a for sale sign outside the team. So guys, let me know your thoughts, give the video a like if you enjoyed, and I'll see you later. Cheers.